Welcome back to Second Nature. I am joined today by Yoon and Kenji from Outdoor Media Summit. The event is coming up super soon, October 27th through the 29th. Second Nature is actually honored at the event, and I'm really excited to see you guys in person, but even more excited to have you on the podcast today. Thanks so much for joining.
Man, this is awesome. Thanks for having us. Super excited.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yoon, let's start with you. Can you kind of give us the origin story for Outdoor Media Summit? How did this whole thing come about?
It's a little bit of a long story.
We
So
got an hour, man. Let's go for it.
we'll jam through it. Yeah. So I started in the outdoor industry 2010. My way I kind of broke in was I started in media. So I was like the tech editor for Snooze, if you remember that back in the day. Ended up turning into Outside Business Journal. It doesn't exist anymore, but and I was writing for like Gear Junkie and Nat Geo and like USA Today and all these like different publications. And so I kind of made my way into the outdoor industry, which there's a fun story there. So I can talk about how I got into the outdoor industry, but how we started Outdoor Media Summit was that's where I started my career was in media. And at one point, a friend of mine named Christian Beckwith, who he had a show called Shift in Jackson Hole, which was a show for land managers and kind of like conservation agencies and those kind of folks. So they would meet together in Jackson Hole once a year. And so he called me up one day and was like, "Hey, Yoon, I know you're super networked in the media community. How do I get media to shift? We need to get media to shift." And I was like, you should just throw a conference at the same time as Shift and put it in the same building. And yeah, that's how you do it. And he's like, "Well, you want to do it?" And at first I was like, "No, I don't want to do that. Sounds like a lot of work." And he was like, "Well, what if I give you some money?" I was like, "Well, I don't know." And I told him no at first, but then later I called him back and I just started thinking about it. I was like, "Wait a minute. This is like a free all-inclusive vacation for like me and a dozen of my media buddies to go to Jackson Hole. What am I doing?" So I called him back and I was like, "Hey man, hey, I think, I think we're going to do it. Sounds good." So the first year there wasn't really that much programming. We had like a couple sessions. Most of it we were kind of combined with Shift. But it felt really cool and it felt good. So we did it a second year at Shift in Jackson Hole again. So it was 2015 and 2016. And then by the third year, we had like outgrown the venue. We had outgrown the space that we had allocated with Shift. So we went on our own. So that's kind of the origin story.
I've got to imagine that era specifically. I mean, 2015, the social media is starting to come online. Opportunities are opening up left, right, and center where it's probably moving away from just websites and print media into all kinds of different ways. So that must have been a really interesting time just for this to happen. People coming in and talking about all these new platforms and how to optimize each one. And I mean, what was that era like for you as you were kind of seeing this stuff develop and being at those events?
Yeah, so I'll say that I started kind of like my media marketing career in like 2007 to 2008, something like that, 2008. So I saw a lot of this stuff. I mean, like Facebook wasn't a thing for brands. You could only like post text updates on your Facebook wall or whatever they call it back then. And like, back in the day of like Stumble Upon and Dig, if you remember those names. So like I kind of watched all this transition happen. But yeah, in the early days in the outdoor industry, it was funny because when I first started going to trade shows at Outdoor Retailer, and this is how I met Kenji, is and so it's like 2000. I think it was the winter show of 2009. I first went there, and I'm like the only, I'm like one of the only young people at the show at the time. On top of that, I'm not white, and I wore a three-piece suit, and I'm like, you know, decked out in my, because I don't, at the time I didn't know what the dress code was. And actually, buddy of mine pulled me over and he's like, "What are you doing in here? They're going to eat you alive here. You need to put on this flannel." And he gave me, he gave me a jacket. And then we became friends. But I would just go booth to booth and like start, be like, start dropping buzzwords like, "Hey, do you know anything about SEO and social media and the Facebooks?" And people just thought I was like the young smart guy, and that's how I started. Was like so. I started a company called Blogs for Brands. It was like we would literally blog for brands, and it was for SEO and all this stuff. And I was like one of the first people to do it. So that's kind of how I broke in. But that's not your question. What was your question again? Oh, what was it like in the early days? That was your question. No.
I mean, it is really, yeah, like you had this experience on sort of the front line of everything. And I think that's a really interesting thing just to think about too, of just seeing this develop first as even a writer for these blogs and websites and everything. I feel like that first stage of experiencing both creating the content as well as seeing the result of the content you created has got to have been a really interesting loop to start turning around and educating people about what that's like. And I can't think of a faster way to learn that than to just get, jump right in and start writing media stuff for Gear Junkie and stuff like that. What was it like back then? Because now creating content on the internet is well, it's an experience for sure. Was it a nicer place back then? Was it was were people excited just to be able to have reviews? I mean, what was that like in the early days of you doing that?
Man, I will say that I freaking love the outdoor industry. I can't say the same about like fly fishing, ski, or like the biking industry, but the outdoor industry just took me in with open arms. And I know that at the time there was a big conversation about like the millennials. How do we engage the millennials? Like all the conversations in the industry was like, we're all, the industry is aging out, and how do we get the young people in the industry? And I was like one of the young people. On top of that, I'm like a person of color, so it made me even more interesting, I guess, to people. But it was an awesome time. It was, just people like Kenji just took me under their wing because I don't even know why, because I look different, and they just, I don't know, they just took me under their wing. It was an awesome, awesome time. Um,
I just thought
and
you were one of those young smart guys. That's all.
Was it the three-piece suit that tipped you off?
Uh, no.
Kenji, I'd love to hear you talk about sort of those initial impressions and kind of what you saw in Yoon. Now, you're working together really closely on all this outdoor media summit stuff, but what was that like in the early days, starting to get to know Yoon and starting to work together and starting to build towards what would eventually become Outdoor Media Summit?
Well, I'm old enough to be analog based. So finding someone like Yoon who really, from a second nature, no pun intended, standpoint, was completely fluent in the world of digital marketing when we met. And I remember Ginger Conrad, who was my marketing director at Outdoor Retailer, uh, told me about you. That's how I first heard about you. And you came on as a writer for the Daily, I think it was, um, back then. And then Outdoor Bloggers Summit and all that started to happen. Um, but yeah, I knew that I needed that expertise, and I did not have it, even though I was trying to push the envelope of the trade show, which was historically mired in sort of production and operations and very little investment in marketing, much less like cutting edge marketing. So Yoon was very interesting to me from the very minute I heard about him. And so that's kind of was my background in trying to build a show that was relevant and like you're doing with Second Nature, pushing the edges of and exploring the edges of the industry, meaning other industries, insights from there, other technologies and ways of doing business that aren't just plug and play from the past.
I was listening to another podcast this morning. Colin and Samir, they do a lot of kind of YouTube and podcast content creator stuff, and they were interviewing the guy who runs Diary of a CEO, and he was talking about this
Mhm.
idea of not being romantic about the result of something, where like actually you're just trying to find the right answer, and if it's not, and so not to be romantic about that your way is the right way, but to be able to find the right way and to be almost dispassionate about finding the right answer. And it seems like you identified in Yoon that ability to get to the actual right answer, which was adding in this layer of digital, adding in this cutting edge approach, and that was going to be the thing that was going to kind of take things up to the next level when it came to putting together these events and growing from there. Does that feel right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I didn't even know what was right, or none of us did really, trying to, but it was important for the show to try to be out there. And a lot of times, we recoil in horror because we made a mistake or we did something kind of goofy. But that's the job of the show management, is to push those edges. And not everyone saw it that way. I certainly had my battles with other show directors from other industries because they didn't know what I was doing and they didn't understand why. But at the end of it, yeah, it's exactly right. And every batter can't hit 1,000, but you got to swing the bat if you're going to hit a home run.
In the context of Outdoor Media Summit, you're really one of the big things that you do is sort of the business development of the summit itself and the executive track as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I work with Yoon closely on all of it, but
And that's really specifically bringing the brands in and bringing the stakeholders from the brands into the event specifically and into the other offerings that you guys have. Is
yeah, I think Yoon really curates the content really well, and as he's done for a long time. So I don't pretend to be the insider marketing expertise guy or what's the current uh, algorithm changes that they need to be known. But I do have a network of people, a long time network of industry leaders and folks that know my background and know that I've been immersed in this thing passionately for over 30 years. And so that's really my value, what I bring to Yoon, because even though he's been in the industry a long time, he doesn't look like he's been in the industry a long time. And even though he stopped wearing the three-piece suit, he still, needs an old guy to kind of dish to when old guys are necessary.
I'm not sure if we've really had a business development person per se on the podcast. So I'm just really curious, and I think a lot of people would love to know even more about this. If you're okay to go down this path for a little bit of just, you know, I just feel like having somebody in that business development realm really kind of like pours fuel on the fire. It opens doors for bigger partnerships. It opens doors for resources to make really cool things come together. And you're sort of like the relationships guy, but you're also the bringing in the resources to make this whole thing happen. Could you talk just a little bit more about because I don't know that many business development people in the outdoor industry, but this is so vital to the success of Outdoor Media Summit and everything else, I've got to imagine.
Yeah, and I think it's at the end of the day, it's about building a sustainable event. And so events are not things necessarily people see as products or even as companies, but it needs to have a sustainable foundation. And so you have to have an equation that works. And it's not easy. Most events lose money for years. I've worked on a lot of different events. I was trying to think about it earlier, like how many events have I managed? Uh, More than 100. And it's hard to get that number at the end to be positive regularly. And I work on events now that are way into the red, because they're just in their first few years, and it's really difficult to make something sustainable stick. If most events you can name are either kind of marginal or they're off the back, they've already lost momentum, and that's one of the key findings I guess I would share here is that what you're trying to do is build momentum behind an event, and when you have it, you can't just put it in the bank. Each year, nobody's going to an event because 2 years ago it was pretty good. They want to know what's happening now, this year, or what does this do for my future? How do I walk away with more insightful content and ideas I can put into action? And this is where Yoon has really knocked it out of the park, is that he understands that intimately. And so he spends hundreds of hours before every OMS event just talking and learning and dialing in the presenters, the content, the speeches, the speakers, and the themes of the event. So, I do biz dev for him, but that's the crux, is having that regular content. And even now, like this is, I think, year 9. We skipped a year because of COVID. Um, he's been on it like a dog on a bone for 10 years. And you know, people have just now kind of feeling like, yeah, I know, I've heard of this event. It's got great reputation throughout the industry. It's regularly showing up on my radar, and I want to come. And I think that's just happened in the last year or two. So this is the nature of events: is you do one a year, and you have to learn from that and see the future for the next year, which is not that easy. So it's maybe analogous to designing products or that, but it's trickier, and there's not many books you can just read and pop out the end and say, okay, now I know how to do it. It's knowing your market intimately. Well, I think what I bring is I bring the people and kind of the longer historical perspective, and Yoon has
Yeah.
the content on lock. So
Kenji's been with me from the beginning, and that's what I lack is that, like what he's saying, that historical perspective, because he can see long term, and managing 100 events, like he can see so much more than what I can see. So he'll just say things like, "You need to stick it out." Okay, how much longer? 2 more years. I'm like, what? You just, and then he'll just, what he says is right because he's got so much experience and he's seen so many different types of events. So that's anyway, that's yeah. Kenji's. There's a scene in. I was telling my team this the other day. There's a scene, like that Wolverine movie where like Wolverine and his brother. I don't know. It's like one of the X-Men movies, but they like go through all the wars together. You know what I'm talking about? They're like in the Civil War, then they're in the Revolutionary War, and before that they're in like all these different wars, and it's kind of like me and Kenji in the trenches. We've been through a lot of.
I won't even tell you
I
how
feel
many
like
times Yoon's fired me, but then, realized, I guess he's okay.
there's a great phrase that I've heard more than a few times that is like jump and the net will appear, and it feels in a way that Kenji is kind of the net, right? Like you got to come with like these ideas that are going to build momentum and get people fired up, but then like eventually Kenji's going to come through with the net to like make this whole thing actually work and be profitable and not be in the red anymore. And that combination of coming up with these cutting edge things, doing something that's really incredible that will lose money year one and year two and whatever, but then eventually it's going to come around to something. You need to have that net there, which is important and balance. And it's difficult to be in a position where you have to do both things, where you're like, I'm going to think of the coolest cutting edge stuff, and I'm also going to figure out how to monetize it in a way like really being able to focus in and having that freedom to develop it and make it be what it is has got to be a really great feeling.
Yeah, Kenji's more like a net manufacturer who's been in the business for over 30 years. And so he can like say, okay, this is the kind of net you need, this is how big you need it. And so just having that on the team is like, and we go way back, but it's invaluable. And, even like beyond our professional relationship, like our friendship is invaluable. And like the mentoring he's providing and all that good stuff. So,
Oh, thanks, Yoon.
yeah, it is, it is definitely, serves many more purposes than just business development.
One of the things that I think about when it comes to events, because when I was at Red Bull, I was putting on just an obscene amount of events as well. And the problem, I think, with events is that if everything goes perfect according to plan, which is rare, no one talks about it. But the second one thing goes wrong, everyone's talking about it. And so your challenge is to not only put on a perfect event, but then what is the key takeaway, or what is the thing that extends the conversation around the event? And I'd love to hear from you. What are the things that you're thinking about in terms of like, okay, obviously we have to nail every final detail of this event. Like silliest things can make or break an event, like the food or the accommodations or the extracurricular stuff or whatever. But what are those things that you're hoping, kind of people take away from OMS when it comes to their experience and something that's going to carry them into wanting to come back around in 2026?
One thing I'll say, I know this doesn't directly answer your question, but kind of going back to like you were saying, like all the little details, and like one of those details can like lead to a bad experience to someone, and that can quickly turn into a chain reaction of like negative sentiment. This is something that I recognized this year, which is, and so I just talked to the team about it. I said that I have never seen an event collapse because a shuttle didn't leave on time, or a speaker started late, or we even had a keynote one year where the keynote didn't get us our slides on time, and so the AV company wasn't able to put slides on. This is the COVID year in Estes Park. So our closing keynote, they didn't. I mean, he did a really good job of winging it, pretending like he didn't have slides in the first place. But his slides weren't on. Like events. In my opinion, I haven't seen events fall apart because of like operations, but I have seen events fall apart because like the team has fallen apart. So for me, my emphasis is really like I want to make sure that our team is like, feeling good and they're taken care of and they are, events are stressful. So I have to like think through like how do we help, people on my team release because at the end of the day, the team is the one, putting on the event, not me. And so, like Kenji, you were mentioning earlier, like I do all the education. I'll say like Erica is actually doing like probably 60 to 70% of the education this year because she has that background in, she's been on the brand marketing side at a brand. She is one of the most prolific journalists and freelancers in our space. And so she's like really running the content this year. But anyway, that's just a thought. I mean, it didn't answer the question at all, but it is a thought that I have, and it's kind of like a philosophy that I have is like, as long as our team is good, the event will kick ass. And so,
Yeah, Erica
it's just,
Erica is
yeah.
superstar for sure.
Holy
Um,
crap.
but
Yeah. Holy
but
crap.
also, I
She's,
would
yeah.
say, Yoon, you have done a great job, and I think this does answer the question in at least one way, and that is testimonials. Like you can talk about your, because what you said is exactly right, Aaron. Like the show stops, and then like this sort of cloud dissipates, right? And like, oh, what happened there? So telling the story of repeatedly, but also testimonials. So getting third parties to give an authentic response, not like, hey, can you give me a positive review? Like that's, every YouTuber does that every day, but they just, I don't know how you do it actually, Ian, but it seems very organic. They just come out and they say, hey, by the way, this was the greatest event I've ever been to, and there's a lot of those over the years. And
Mhm.
casting those is a really good way to get a sort of third party recommendation, which of course is really, really important for all brands.
Yeah, Kenji, you nailed it. There's so many. I'd say probably like 80 to 90% of the testimonials I get use some kind of word like best or most or favorite or, and it's like it's crazy for me to hear this but then I'll sometimes I'll ask like why and then the person will be like I don't know, it was just really good. I can't pinpoint why they're in and I don't know. It just all to me goes back to that whole philosophy of like, if the team is great, the event will be just fine.
Erica Zazo, I'm pretty sure is in our Second
Mhm.
Nature Slack channel. I've
Oh
seen her
yeah.
pop up a few times. I'd love to hear you talk. Also, just how did you think about building the team from OMS? Both you and Kenji have a big role and jobs to do, but you've got people like Erica
Mhm.
and some other people working in. How do you think about building the team around OMS when it comes to pulling the right people in to help curate the content or execute the event? I mean, seems like you could go a billion different directions on that one.
Yeah, and like we're kind of positioned in a very convenient way because I have an agency. So we've got a e-commerce, like technical e-commerce agency. Outdoor Ecom is the name of the agency. So we do like technical Shopify builds, like integrations and ERP and like kind of more technical stuff we do. We're the only Amazon preferred partner that focuses on the outdoor industry. We don't do like social media and we really try to kind of focus on like technical e-commerce type stuff. We do a lot of product videos that are like 3D motion, like 3D render slash motion graphic type of videos that like not just anyone with a camera can do. Like you really have to know the software. So we try to get like do a little bit more that kind of technical work. So we've got 4 people on the agency side that I've been working with for like 10 years and 9 years, and they're just super sharp, like super stoked people. And so they do a lot of the operations. So like our AV head and like the person that does the recap video at the end, like the person that does all the slides and the the transitions. Like we have like a lot of like really fancy like graphics and transitions stuff like that. So we have that like a little bit of that manpower in house. So that positions us nicely. But I'll also say that man, like it is a lot of luck. Like I have just been struck by lightning, like so many, no, knock on wood here, but like just so many times, gotten so lucky. I hear my wife talk about like some of the stuff that happens at her work, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that would just drive me insane. Like to be surrounded by people who, I mean, I'm just surrounded by so much extreme competence that like I don't know what it would be like in her situation where she's the competent one and everyone like I'm like the incompetent one in my team. and everyone is like, but in her work, it's like the other way around, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you. But yeah, it's so like so much luck is the answer to the question.
I feel like there's something to be said for raising your hand and starting to build something, and the people that identify the value in that wanting to come in and help. I think my experience too, we've seen so many people come from every corner of the outdoor industry wanting to assist and make intros and open doors. And if you're, a, if you're able to follow up on that and make good on that and hopefully provide some value back to those people as well, the outcome of that reciprocation is just out of control. And sort of the indirect stuff that comes from putting these things out is really tremendous. I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit more about the event itself. So, Outdoor Media Summit's going to be in Durango this year. It's coming at the end of October, and there's a lot that's kind of built into it. But could you give the listeners to Second Nature just a chance to understand, what are the people coming to the event going to experience from kind of day one on? You don't have to go, session by session, but what's kind of the overview of what OMS is all about?
Yeah, so I'll kind of do my like spiel, so to speak, and then Kenji can kind of go in the executive track portion, which we are now going to rebrand to Outdoor CEO Summit, which we'll talk about. I'll talk about a little bit later. But basically, the flow is on the 26th we have a camp out, and it's like a limited camp out for certain speakers and VVIP media. Especially folks like, if they're on the East Coast, like we need to get them in early, whatever. So we do this on the 26th, and the 27th is our trade show day. So that's what we call New Gear Speed Date. I just know that we've talked to a lot of kind of gear review media, and a lot of these gear review media, they just won't go to trade shows anymore because they say the same thing. I can't just walk around aimlessly between, booths for 3 days straight. I can do it for like 4 hours. So that's what we did is we built it for 4 hours. So it's like the speed date. So it doesn't work for everyone. Some journalists, like they go in the speed date format and they're like, no, I want a full 30-minute meeting and be able to catch up and have a conversation. But some journalists are like, yeah, I want to do that over a campfire or a bike ride or on, fly fishing. But, when it comes to the product stuff, let's just get this over in 10 minutes. I don't need 30 minutes to go over like product specs, MSRP, like when does it come out? Like, do you have a press kit? So that's what we do. That's our trade show day. It's called New Gear Speed Date. And then that's Monday. Tuesday, first day of education. We do keynotes, breakout sessions. We try to really focus on like technical education because there's just so much good education out there. But we've kind of like taken, I guess, like the role that we've had over the last 10 years is providing that super technical, the secrets, like the secret sauce, like the hacks, or like, like cracking the code and stuff like that. So if someone has like a secret hack that they figured out, like, oh man, you could spend 10 hours doing it like this, or you could just click one button and, and have it all done. It'll be like 10 times more accurate. Like that's what we're looking for. So we're looking for all those kind of like technical educations, the secrets. So that's breakout sessions, keynotes this year. The theme is going to be on public lands. And then we do something. Oh, this is super exciting. So then we're doing excursions this year. So everyone will split up into 8 groups. There's like a group going fly fishing. There's some people going mountain biking. Benton's leading this mountain biking thing. Patagonia and Mayfly Outdoor doing this like fly fishing thing. There's this like what are the other ones? Soaking in the Hot Springs by Dometic, and Osprey and Goo are doing this trail work. So there's like all these different excursions that are happening all over town. They go out for 4 hours and then come back. And then our reception this year is on a train. It's on the DNS narrow gauge train. So everyone will board the train. We'll party on the train for like, 2.5 hours, whatever it is. And that's our evening reception. So that's day 2. And then day 3, Conservation Alliance. We're resurrecting a form of the Conservation Alliance breakfast. If folks remember that from a long time ago, that kind of predated me, but I just know that was a rallying cry for the industry. So we'll do a form of that at Outdoor Media Summit in the morning. That'll be led by Paul Hendricks and team. Lily's been super, super awesome, and so has Katie and some other folks on their team that have been real awesome help us put that together. Okay, so that's in the morning, and then we go breakout sessions, and then we'll do Outdoor Media Awards, which is the award ceremony for media in the outdoor industry. That's kind of the programming. Kenji, on the CEO side of things, you want to, or Aaron? Sorry, I will let you do the conversation.
No, that's really great. I mean, I want to get to the CEO side of things. I guess, Kenji, when it comes to building out and your role in business development when it comes to Outdoor Media Summit, what is that experience like for you over those few days? Is this really about, just making sure that the attendees that are related to the business development are having a great time? Are you trying to like build into 2026 already? Like, what do those conversations look like in your world during
Oh,
that
that's an
window?
interesting question. Most of my work in biz dev for OMS and for the executive track are months in advance. Much earlier. So on site, Yoon was right about his team. Like they are really excellent. At production, at operations. And so, really, my role there is really to sort of do my best to be part of that team. I run one of the rooms, so I have to manage kind of the recording and the speaker prep and the sort of nuts and bolts, particularly on the executive track side. So on site, I'm really just one of the team. I'm definitely the most senior person of the team, and so I think a lot of Yoon's team are really you're much younger than I am. They're very fluent in digital tactics, and so my role is more senior statesman. I can you know make housekeeping announcements or welcome people. A lot of people see that I know some of the more senior folks, so that having that aspect is important, especially for young up and coming people in the industry, whether on the media side or they're operating brands. A lot of the brands that do come, we do have big brands like Patagonia, Columbia, Mountain Hardware who are involved, but I would say 80% of the attendance from the brand leader side are smaller to medium sized companies coming up who really, these are founders and CEOs who have found some success, but they're trying to make it to the next level. They're trying to, go international or get wholesale distribution or get to that 7 or 8 figure number that they've been dreaming of. And so coming to this event helps them see those opportunities, meet other people in that network, and get some tips, particularly out in the executive track side. So I don't know if you want me to transition to that right now, but yeah,
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about this executive track, which you said is sort of getting rebranded as the Outdoor CEO Summit. Is that right?
Yeah, for
yeah,
2026. Yeah. So we'll
Okay.
rebrand. So this year we've done this for 2 years now. So we launched it last year. Word on the street was it was pretty good. So we did it again this year. We had like 30 CEOs this year. This year we'll be at like 40. And so next year we're going to rebrand to Outdoor CEO Summit, and that it will still be at the same time as Outdoor Media Summit, at least for next year. It does potentially make it to where we could split it off if we need to, but it's going to be like the whole point being that it's no longer just a breakout session track. It's going to be full programming for what we're calling growth stage or even later stage emerging CEOs of growth stage or later stage companies is kind of like who our target market is,
yeah.
So you said there's going to be 40 CEOs at Outdoor Media Summit this year.
roughly. Mhm.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
it makes sense when you think about founders and folks that are in the early part of the arc as a company. Oftentimes they're the CEO, but they're also the CMO and the CFO and the chief bottle washer and the janitor. Like they're doing all that. And so that's why they attend OMS to begin with, is to gain that expertise and stay on the front edge of marketing tactics and techniques. So they're already coming. So, from early on, we would have a few CEOs, and then there was 10, and then there was 15, and then there was 25. And so it's a natural occurrence that we recognized some years ago and said, well, let's make content that's really specific to them. So they'll get the beauty of the double hit, which is exposure to working media. Like that's important for all up and coming brands. It's important for all brands to have relationships, not just I saw you on the Zoom call, let me LinkedIn with you, but I met you and we had a drink together and we talked about our families, like relationships. And those are not fast trackable online. You can meet people, there can be intros, but relationships happen in person. And so that's the goal of the
Yeah.
executive track, is not just to deliver content that really is targeted, things like M&A activity in the outdoor industry, or financing or managing leaders, like how do you manage managers, like those are not questions necessarily that a director of marketing would be psyched to sign up for, but a CEO who's also a CMO would definitely benefit from that. So that's the sort of content we're delivering in the executive track. The success we've had so far is driving us to create this sort of separate event, the CEO Summit, because there's not enough summits in the industry already. So we have to, no, just kidding. But it's the out, people know this for what it is. So we're counting on them continuing to track us and participate both on the speaker side, the advisor side, the CEO, uh, outdoor CEO network, and then the summit.
I'm just looking through some of the titles of the executive track stuff where you've got 8 figures in 8 years, secrets of scaling, pros and cons of made in the USA, a roadmap. I mean, these sound like really fascinating ones. I'm probably not in the executive track, but these are really, really fascinating topics that I'd love to, be a fly on the wall for some of those conversations. Not to say the other stuff isn't really, really fascinating. I mean, I'm just looking through all the different stuff that's on offer in a pretty, just a few days. There's a lot of knowledge being dropped by a lot of really, really interesting people who have had a ton of experience in this industry. And I think, when I first, our introduction was really being nominated for one of the awards, but then looking through everything else that's going to come through, the awards seem great, but actually like the other information that we're going to get a chance to see, these case studies, and these, people talking about tech stacks and everything else that's in here. I'm just so excited to actually sit through and listen to this. I'm going to bring my notebook and just be taking notes this whole time.
I'll say that's one advantage of having the agency, the e-commerce agency, is like we're so deeply immersed in really, really, really technical topics, and we're talking about like EDI integrations with Amazon Canada. We're actually doing the integration. Like we're so deep in the weeds that like we know what's happening on the e-commerce, the direct. We're not as strong on the retail side of things, but like we do have that muscle. Like Kenji brings how many years you were at A16, and then even through all your time, 30 years in events, like a lot of your experience was based on retail wholesale versus direct. So it's convenient that we're able to pull that like deep, very like knowledge of what's happening in e-commerce and all that kind of stuff, and then we know the people who are doing it right, so we can reach out to these folks and be like, hey, you guys are crushing it when it comes to like, ERP integration and blah, 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 blah. Can you speak about that? And then, so anyway.
What does the future of Outdoor Media Summit look like? I mean, you've got, almost 10 years in the bag so far, and seems like you've kind of got it down to a science on certain stuff. I know, the landscape is always shifting and changing, and there's all kinds of unknown unknowns that pop up. But what are you thinking about as you kind of look ahead with everything that you're doing?
So we have a very, very, very exciting announcement that we are breaking on your guys' show. So the big future for us is Outdoor CEO Network. So, executive track will turn into Outdoor CEO Summit, but Outdoor CEO Network is what we're most excited about right now. So I'll kind of go into that project. And so Outdoor CEO Network will be a peer advisory group for, again, growth stage or later stage founders of growth stage, later stage companies. So we're not talking about, early stage or startup or even pre-revenue like that. There's a lot of infrastructure in the outdoor industry for the early stage. We're looking for the guys that are already doing 7 figures and they want to get to 8 or 9. The folks that are doing 8 figures and want to go to 9, and have traction, have proven track record. They're already somewhat trending and being known as a hot brand. So those types of companies, we want to help accelerate those guys in a cohort based style. And and really offer them kind of two things, which is like mentoring from the most legendary founders and the most legendary exiters in the outdoor industry. So folks like Jeff Polk, nine-figure exit, GCI Outdoor. Folks like Mike Wallenfels, co-founder and former president of Mountain Hardware. Kenji, you've got your list of folks who are like down to be, in this part of this mentoring group. But like these are the most legendary, like successful exiters and founders in the outdoor industry. And so like having access to like, how did you do it as a, a female founder in the outdoor? How did you do it back in the 80s and 90s? How are you the first publicly traded company? And, and so that's kind of the first component of Outdoor CEO Network. We'll be connecting with outdoor industry specific mentors for companies that are already doing big things, going to do greater things. And then so the second thing is the education that we'll provide. And so this is so exciting. So we have a partnership with an ESO called Startup Junkie. So if you're in kind of the startup and tech world, you'll recognize that name. They're the largest ESO in the Southeast. ESO meaning Entrepreneurial Support Organization. And Startup Junkie was behind they were the ESO behind the Global Cycling Accelerator. If you're in the you probably recognize Global Cycling Accelerator that was here in Bentonville. They're the ESO behind that. But one thing that makes Startup Junkie so unique is that they are so a lot, like your Y Combinators and Techstars and Plug and Plays, like they're really focused on early stage. But Startup Junkie, they do focus on the early stage, but they have a specific emphasis on again, it's this later stage or like, growth stage. And so they want to take the companies that are doing 7 figures and turn them into 8 figures. And so they've got these programs, these education, cohort-based programs that are already pre-built for the biotech space, for the retail space, for transportation, for these are kind of like the industry clusters here in the Southeast. And so they've got these pre-built like education infrastructure for those types of companies. And now they can create it around the outdoor industry via, like us working with them. So super excited on that partnership. They're just like absolutely crushing it out there. Yeah, that's the thing that I'm most excited about is Outdoor CEO Network. And we're gonna be looking for the best of the best. I mean, we'll be, hunting for, again, we're not looking for early stage. We're looking for folks who have traction and, proven track record and that sort of thing.
It seems like you're looking for the people who are experiencing growing pains, right? Like you've made it through the first hurdles of getting this thing up and running, of proving the concept out, of finding product market fit. You've made it through all the first round of, getting kicked in the shins. Mm-hmm. And now you need to, really hit the afterburners to go to that next level. And that's where this set of expertise really comes in and helps you unlock that stuff, because you've probably figured out how to get, all the basics handled at that point. And this is really that next level. How are they going to get involved with Outdoor CEO Network? It sounds like, I mean, I'm just thinking about Kenji's Rolodex and who could be a mentor in there. I'm sure you have just a long list of people to come in and assist and play important roles. But say there's a brand out there that has made it through these hurdles, who is now experiencing growing pains, it's the perfect fit. How do they get in the door? What's the path for someone to join the Outdoor CEO Network?
So it'll be this is currently how we are looking at the program. And so this is how Startup Junkie has been kind of advising us on. And so we're still, a little early on that conversation in terms of exactly what it'll look like, but we're thinking couple cohorts a year. Cohorts are limited to like 20, roughly 15 to 20 is a good size. And it'll be semi-invite only, but it'll be application based. It'll be, there's going to be folks in the woodworks that I haven't heard of, but I look at them and I'm like, holy shit, you guys are $20 million company. I didn't even know that. You guys are blowing up in this niche, and I had no idea. There's like, and even at Outdoor Media Summit, I mean, there's these great names that like most people haven't heard of, and then like the CEO will say something like, "Yeah, we're a $40 million company. We're eating so and so's lunch. We're taking all," and then it's just like, "Oh my gosh!" They like cornered the market on like whatever this product category. So those we'll be on the hunt for those guys. I already know who some of these folks are. some of the brands. Anyway, that if that answers your question.
Even currently, it's an invitational platform. So Yoon and I built a little program called Flip some years ago, the Future Leadership. Uh, what was it? Future Leadership Institute. Investment, that's what it was.
Investment,
Yeah, so it's
investment.
kind of we're using a little bit of that same playbook to build out this network. So it would be invitational, but certainly people, brands and brand leaders that we don't know are out there by the hundreds, and so it is going to be our challenge to find them and invite them into the program in whatever way they'll fit.
And what does it look like for someone who's joined the Outdoor CEO Network? And it sounds like, this is a brand new announcement. Obviously, it's sort of exclusive here. I'm just so curious about it. I mean, that a brand that comes in, that CEO that joins the network, is there? Do they have access to additional investment? Is
Mhm.
there some sort of, because I've seen like the Y Combinators where they
Mhm.
trade out a little bit of equity to get, some pretty substantial upside. What does that kind of agreement look like? Is that something that's still kind of in development?
Yeah, that'll be case by case. I mean, kind of like what the entry, looks like. But really, I think it's more of like what the value of what they'll receive on the backside, which is access to very specific. So one of the things that we do really well, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but what I feel like what we do well as Outdoor Media Summit and now Outdoor CEO Summit is we curate the content based on someone's like specific demand. Someone's got this itch and it's like in this really specific corner and they have to scratch that itch. And we know how to go find the people who have scratched that itch before, which takes a lot of time, but we can find that specific expert. So if someone joins the program, like you're saying, growing pains, and then even some of the folks, so in the later stage companies, they're going to start thinking about exit. So, they're going to have a different set of like demands with questions, but they're going to come in with these super, super hyper specific questions, right? Like, I'm going to go back to my ERP example. Like, which ERP should I go with? We're really sick of Microsoft Dynamics or whatever it is. And then we'll find three people who have replatformed to Sage and whatever, and then they will give a presentation on like these are the pros and cons of these different ERP systems, and this is why you need to consider this, not this one. Like a super hyper specific need that a growing CEO of a growing company has, right? And we know how to find those experts. We'll pay those experts money so they can give an unbiased review versus having NetSuite go up there and give a presentation. Of course, they're going to be like, everyone else sucks. Our platform's the best. Instead of doing that, we're going to find people who we know have gone through this process and pay them to share their experience. So that's kind of like going back to your question. What was your question again? You said
Just what does it look like for the brands that are coming in? What can they expect in terms of, what does the actual transaction look like? Because it sounds awesome, like getting access to all these people that can help you solve the major problems that the businesses are likely facing in terms of growth and exits and everything like that.
There is a membership, entrance that we're asking for to be part of it. But in what Yoon's talking about is like what they're getting for this will far outpace the little bit that we are asking to support it. They'll have access to data that is specialized, that we put together from the different dashboards that are available, event registrations to build that face to face and to facilitate learning and adopting more sort of best practices, um, specialized content, as Yoon was just talking about. That's curated. It's not a TED talk. It's not motivational. Those help, but you can find those online pretty easily, right? What we're talking about is has a unique value proposition to those up and coming leaders in the outdoor industry. The mentorship factor with the CEO network is another value point. Very hard to find that. Like you can't just go sign up for a mentor network, right? That's you've got to have that
Mm.
curated. Um, and FAQs and other things that just it's as they say, Aaron, it's lonely at the top, right? And these CEOs, these leaders have, they've sort of elevated to this point and their peer network is sometimes invisible or very hard to find. So that's what we're, at the end of the day, that's the itch we're trying to scratch.
It's so interesting to me to reflect on what you're doing with this outdoor CEO network that I feel like you started with the summit, you know, the meeting, the event itself, and then using that stuff. Like it makes sense to me why you would have the outdoor CEO network because you've had this executive track, you've had a specific kind of carve out within OMS that's related to those CEOs and providing value to them, and then it as an extension of that, this network comes from that. I feel like a lot of times you see people start with the outdoor CEO network and then add in the summit. So it's interesting to see you guys kind of flip the model around of like, hey, we've been proving ourselves with the content that we've been putting in this executive track for years. And now we're going to build an offering on top of it that's going to last more than 2 or 3 days once a year. It's going to be this constant thing that's going to have much deeper stuff. And it's just fascinating to see building in that direction when I feel like most people would come at it the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, I have a buddy you probably know, Stephen Reginald, founder of Gear Junkie, and he was telling me that he was at the house the other day, and he was like, "Man, you did it the other way around. You know, he did all the hard work and built the event, and now you're creating the community and whatnot on the other side." It's funny that
Great minds think alike.
You know, one thing that I was always terrified of back at Outdoor Retailer was being seen as a vendor to the industry, meaning we're not really part of the industry. You're just providing this service that I can just change out in it many different ways. And I think that was what kept me up at night. And I think that's why we do it the way we're doing it. It's coming at it from more an experiential side. Like, here's our experience. Here's what we know people have told us over some years that they're missing or that they need. It's not providing a service to an audience that's yet to be identified. So there are, it is two different approaches, and there are definitely organizations that do the latter, and we're trying to do it a different way from the inside out. I would call it. You know, we know the people, we are intimate with the topics, not just this year's topics, but as they've unfolded over decades. So it makes it a little easier to see what might be coming ahead, even though that's that's the hardest thing of all.
And one thing I'll throw into that too is Kenji and I have been working on this project for 3 years now. So we have been like noodling on this thing, building it out, building it out. But I think really just kind of getting the support from Startup Junkie, and they have the experience with the Global Cycling Accelerator. And they're tied in with Cadron Capital Partners and all their network of finance partners. So I think that just makes it to where like, all right, the time is now.
Hustling hard. I mean, this is a lot. There's a big heavy lift between the event and the network and everything else that you guys are working on. Before we get into our closing segment, BPC, I just want to ask you guys whether it comes to OMS or the Outdoor CEO Network or kind of everything you're doing. What is the signal that you're looking for? What does success actually look like? What's the point in which you're going to be like, we did it?
Yeah. Kenji, I have mine.
The metrics side, I'm an events guy, so that's kind of what I look at first, and I try to track as we go. And so one of those is how many people come back to the event. You know, what's the return ratio of attendees? That's part of it. Yeah, the Net Promoter Score is a thing that helps basically answer the question: would you invite your friends to come to this event next time? So that's just a simple question. But if you just ask it like that, there's no context. So there's a process. And so anyway, coming up with a data point like that is, I think, important. Obviously, making it sustainable. Like, does it come out with at least a break even number after all the people have been paid, after the venue gets their cut, and the books are closed? Did you Is this sustainable? Can we do this again next time? So those are two of the most important sort of metrics. But the other piece I kind of mentioned before about testimonials, like, what did people say about it? What are they posting on their own that wasn't us asking them to do it or begging them to do it or paying them to do it. It was an organic um, post that revealed the excitement and the experience of coming to OMS and the executive track.
Yeah, good call, Kenji. Yeah, that's a great answer. Because at the end of the day, I mean, Kenji and I could go work in another industry. I came from finance, so like we could make more money doing something else. But like our reputations are, at the end of the day, like those testimonials are a reflection of our reputation. And if it's like the testimonials aren't good and we're not making as much as we should, right? Then it's like, why are we doing this? So when those testimonials are there, it's like, okay, it's worth it. And but I would say for me, I think like the metric side is definitely NPS, and so we've never dipped below a 79 NPS, which is like to me that's like crazy, and I think not to be lame and copy on this, but Kenji, I think like probably the testimonial piece is just hearing like from someone else that someone else heard from someone else that this is like the best or most or favorite or whatever, fill in the blank
Mhm.
gathering, weird camping trip, whatever they want to call it, conference, summit, whatever they want to call it. But if they can, hearing that, it makes it worth it.
I feel like the number one thing when it comes to building relationships, which is what this all sort of boils down to. If you're going to the event, you're there to build relationships. If you're putting on the event, you're also building relationships in many other ways. And I think that the key to all of that is always, delivering value to other people. It's always sort of comes back to that, like, how do you make this a valuable experience for people? And if you can do that the right way, then they're going to carry on, whether it's telling other people or coming back to it or just having a general positive sentiment going out into the world about it. If you can deliver value in a meaningful way, that's the key to keep it going. Well, this is the part of the podcast we always call BPC, brand product content. And basically it's our chance to sort of riff on one piece of content that we love or a brand we've discovered or a product that we've been using. And it's kind of our closing segment to share with the audience stuff that we're excited about. You and I'll have you go first. What do you
Yeah.
got?
All right, so I have been wearing the exact same clothes every single day for the last 10 years, a little more than 10 years now. So I have 20 of these great t-shirts. There's sustainability is a big component of that where I just, so when I used to work in media and I did gear reviews for all these companies, people would just like mail me stuff and I would just have packages show up at my house and just stuff. And at first it was like, oh, cool, I get all this free stuff, and it's like, got stoked out on it. But then we'd have all this conversation on sustainability, and I was just like, man, this isn't. It just something doesn't seem right about getting all this new stuff, giving half of it away because I'm getting so much more new stuff. So I just made a decision one day, and I was like, no, I'm just going to do 20 gray t-shirts, 5 of the exact same sweater, and I've got holes in my. It's merino wool, so every year they get holes, and I've got holes all in them, and I've got 7, pairs of the flex canvas lives in pants. So I think going back to your question, gear. For me, I think after many years of my wife pleading that I switch out this gray T-shirt, think I'm convinced. I've been thinking about this for over a year now. This specific T-shirt from Livson, and so I think I'm gonna get 20 of those and then replace these gray T-shirts because these are starting to fail now. They're like starting to get holes and the stitching is starting to come apart. So anyway, going back to your gear question, because Libsyn's whole philosophy is about owning less, and I'm like, they built their brand around me. That's me. Like I want to own less and not have so much clothes and stuff.
So head to toe Livson, then you've got the pants, you got the new shirts that are coming in. What was it about Livson? It's just that idea of owning less, and
Yeah,
then that just like hit just right.
yeah. I mean, they make so for one, they have a repair program. So like these, the stitchings are all kind of coming apart. So in 10 years, I'll go back to Andrew, Libsyn and be like, hey, my stitching's coming apart. Can you restitch it here? And maybe I can get 20 years out of these shirts. So that's appeals to me. Yeah, it's just that whole philosophy of like you can live life more by owning less. Like that whole just
I dig it. I dig it. Well, I feel like Livson's a great brand, and yeah, if you're gonna wear a shirt for the next 20 years, that feels like the right call for sure. Support the outdoor industry, vote with your dollars, and yeah, if they last that long and they'll take care of them and help you take care of them, that seems like a great fit. All right, Kenji, what you got for BPC?
Oh, well, my BPC choice is the Yoshino Power Station. It's the first solid state portable battery, I'll call it. It's got 2,600 kilowatt hours. It's a really robust piece of gear that backs up. It's a generator, but it doesn't run on gasoline or that. It's you charge it. I solar charge it. I just took it up into the sawtooths, but actually I got it because my wife has a medical condition that requires available power at a pretty high level. So I've got this Yoshino, and I was talking to one of the CEOs who is now in charge of Goal Zero, and I also have a Goal Zero power station, so I'm able to kind of A B and test them out. But I'll just name the Yoshino power station because that's one that doesn't get a lot of press. Goal Zero is I would say the leader in the industry around it. So anyway, I'm just keeping that charged up for my next blackout.
Okay, I've got something special. This is the Flylo book called Homegrown. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Flylo is
Whoa,
like a they make like ski
we know Flylo.
snow apparel. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually some pretty ripping mountain bike gear too.
Oh
We're gonna
yeah.
have Dan on the podcast pretty soon here, but they have this
Nice.
book. They just had their 20-year anniversary as a
Jesus.
brand, and they made this hardcover book, and it's got all kinds of stories and articles and timelines and everything about their journey over the last 20 years. And I just love everything about this. I'm learning a lot about the brand, reading through it, and just the images of their journey to get at this point. I wish every brand did this when they hit a milestone like that, or maybe this is a Galaxy brand, but it'd be cool to see somebody come out with a series of books where they dive into all the different brands and tell the backstories and the timelines and stuff. Because it's a coffee table book for sure. It's something special that Philo can kind of hold up, but I just think I mean, as far as like just seeing a brand evolve and seeing how they've held true to their original plan and vision, and how they've evolved in certain ways too. I don't know. I find this really interesting and kind of a fun piece to kind of flip through and learn from. So that's my special one for today.
Nice. That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Not to drop a bombshell in the last like 1 minute of the podcast here, but I'm going to.
Send it.
And then we'll just leave it at that, and then the audience will be like, "What?" So, in 1959, my grandma invented fleece. Like, yeah, and not okay. So fleece is actually not a material; it's a process. So you can fleece a lot of different materials. But she was the one that fleeced like cotton for the first time. So like in a hoodie on the inside, it's all soft and fuzzy. They were the first ones to I guess, like commercialize fleece. But I want to do a similar project like that, like write a book about that journey. So I have like all these interviews. I'm like, she's 99. She just turned 99. I want to do all these interviews and like make a book and do something around that story because it's such an incredible story. Like she like escaped North Korea and then later invented fleece. Anyway, we'll just leave your listeners with that.
Wow. I don't even have words. That's amazing. That's like the mic drop moment. My grandma invented fleece. You're welcome. Wow. Incredible. Well, guys, thank you so much for the time today. Yoon, whenever you write that book, come on back. We'll do a whole thing about that too, because that
Sweet,
seems like
heck yeah, yeah,
I'm like first in line to read that one too. No, I'm really looking forward to the event this year. Thank you for including us, and can't wait to see everybody there. And we will report back, but I'm sure it's just going to be an epic few days in Durango. So really looking forward to it. But thank you guys so much for the time today.
yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Second Nature podcast listeners, and we'll see you there at
Yeah,
LMS.
very grateful. Thanks.